All right, folks. Settle down, please.
Wasn't that amazing? Yes, it was. A black female director, Jennifer Hudson. That was it, man. Give it up again for both. They're right here. Give it up. Let them feel your love. Thank you.
Okay. Our guest moderator tonight is a dear friend of Miss Aretha Franklin and a native of Detroit. Detroit in the house? The D. All right, please give a round of applause for Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. And please give a round of applause for our director, Miss Liesl Tommy.
Yes. Okay. And last, but definitely not least, didn't she embody the spirit of Miss Aretha Franklin? Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Martha's Vineyard Summer's Finest Film Festival applause for the one and only Miss Jennifer Hudson. Thank you.
I'm trying, honey. Oh, Jesus, thank you. That was so beautiful. Thank y'all for that amazing welcome. Thank you.
I mean, we might have to open the doors of the church.
Come on, where?
Oh, Lord. What an incredible film. What an incredible performance. And what an amazing embodiment of a woman who, I guess with freakish precocity, gestated in the rhetorical womb of her father, and then born as a bronze wunderkind, a gospel wunderkind, a genius. And we rarely see the origin story of black female genius, right? And so I want to start with the director, Ms. Tommy, and say, you know, what was it like to have the burden and opportunity to tell the story of what Rolling Stone magazine said was the greatest voice, the greatest singer in the history of this country? Tell us what it felt like, what it meant to you to usher her story onto the silver screen.
I know that's right.
First of all, I'm very emotional. It was the first time I've watched it in a crowd of people. Because of COVID, I edited it alone in my apartment. So this is just extremely special. Listen, I knew I wanted it. I went for it, I fought for it. I knew exactly what the movie should be. And I was fortunate enough to be able, I convinced the studio what the movie should be, that it should start in the church and end in the church. And that it should be a story about a woman who had the greatest voice in the world, searching for her voice. And I knew that I could not fail because Jennifer Hudson was playing the title part.
Thank you.
I don't know a time when I did not know Aretha Franklin's music as a child. I grew up in a very musical home. I think I heard her in the womb for the first time, maybe. So she was just a part of my, little artistic self, always. Sometimes you just know that something's meant to be. I felt so clear about what my vision for the film was that it gave me a kind of strange confidence. And I loved her so much that I felt like I couldn't fail. Because the only thing I cared about was taking care of her legacy. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. No. And before I get to Ms. Hudson, what that we didn't see on film influenced how you shaped what we ended up seeing on film, right? The nuances, I mean, the condensed story, the suffering, her childhood, 12 years old as a mother, 15 years old as a mother, the complicated relationship with her father, and how you both presented him in the full range of his humanity, but didn't diminish his glory. So what we didn't see that informed what we did see.
So, when you make a film or you tell a story, you have to find the spine. And the roadmap for me was her music. So there are millions of people who have brilliant voices, but only she sang with the emotional intensity that she sang with. Only she could make music feel epic as well as make music feel intimate. And that was my roadmap. I knew that I would have to make a film that was profoundly emotional because she was profoundly emotional in her singing. And there would be moments of transcendent sighs because that's how she was, and there were going to be moments of profound vulnerability because that's how she was in her music. So her music told me what to do in terms of making this film. And then the other thing is, in early analysis, I had to say to myself, what is the queen of soul? What is soul? And so putting the film together was about helping us understand how she became the person that could sing with that kind of emotionality, what made her so soulful. And you had to tell her origin story to come to that.
No, so beautiful too. Ms. Hudson.
Yes, sir.
That performance that you gave up on
Thank you.
that film right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Praise God.
And
Wow.
without question, without question, you could win Best Supporting and Major Actor at the same time on the same film.
Thank you.
But you were able to capture, and knowing her as well as I did, you were able to capture the vulnerability, the strength, the fierceness, the way in which the epic tides of grief swept over her life, and then the glorious pettiness that she was able to do in a beautiful way. Right? Y'all remember that interview where she was asked about a singer and she went, beautiful gowns. So her signifying was second to none. But you were able to do that without making her a caricature, not a cartoon. So what about her, if you pick and choose among all the great qualities she had, what inspired you most to do what you did up on that screen?
That's a very good question. I think it's coming off of what you said, like maintaining the legacy. And I think what also helped me is knowing the human her person, and that's always important to me as a human being. I want everybody to know I'm a human being first, and I love to see people's human. And what I noticed being an artist myself is a lot of times when I'm nowhere near Aretha's level, I understand that, that's not what I'm saying, but when you're of an iconic stature like that and a legend, sometimes people forget there is a human with a story and a life. And I think that's what I wanted to tap into more so than anything, is to show that it gave, my goal with the film, I would say to myself, I know we all have a respect for Miss Aretha Franklin, but by the time we get to the end of this film, I want them to have a newfound respect for her. Exactly, yeah. And once you learn the things she went through in her time, it gave the music that much more substance, which can make you look at it a different way and appreciate it from a different perspective. You know what I mean? You can't help but to acknowledge and honor the human, and I love real things, you know what I mean? So it's like to draw from those real things, and we can all relate to those things. So starting with the human of it all was the base for me.
Right. And, you know, that humanity shines forth. A lot of stuff that people probably didn't know. We'll talk a bit later about her politics. But you know, knowing that you're a deeply spiritual woman yourself, and knowing this film shows the gut bucket glory of the gospel, and it shows the highfalutin and the fake stuff, and the tension between the ideals and the realities of what they're doing. And did you ever think, you know, one of the problems that she faced, one of the barriers she faced, Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, is that when you go from religious to what black people used to call circular, when you go to the secular music, right? Yes. And you feel that tension, and she felt that the world was hers, that God gave her the music in the, quote, secular world, and God gave her the religious stuff. You as a deeply spiritual person, what did you think about seeing some of that stuff revealed, right? Some of the tension, some of the contradiction. And did you fear that by showing that in all of its truth, that people would misinterpret it? Or did you feel, nope, it's there for what it is, and people gonna understand?
Well, that goes to my job as the actor. She said, Jennifer, I want you to portray me. Okay, well, what is there to be portrayed? You know, with the best integrity possible. But again, that goes to the base of the reality of it. And we all have that. We all have a story. We all have triumphs. We all go through things, no matter who you are. And so as an actor, my job was to tell that story, but I like to think from the most honest and real place from within myself as well. You know, and that, to me, is what spoke to me most while filming, when it hit me like, okay, this goes beyond me being a singer and an actress, but I think she knew that more than I realized, because I didn't realize how much she had been through. And we would have conversations all the time, and I was like, man, it's like she's teaching me more about life while teaching me about her life. And so when we were filming, especially the scene, when this Audrey McDonald's character, who plays her mother, comes to her, and it was so real to me in that moment. And she said, Audrey said, this is a very heavy life to tell. And I was like, oh my God, yes it is. But I don't think I would have been able to tell it in such an in-depth way without my own life triumphs. And I think Aretha saw that in me as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, no. And before we get back to Miss Tommy, how did you, like, what was the actual thing? When did you find out that she wanted you to play? How did she tell you that she wanted you?
Ooh, child. Well, we first met 15 years ago. This was right after I won the Oscar for Dreamgirls. We had a meeting in New York, and she said, what, you're shy or something? I was like, well, I am sitting at the table with Miss Aretha Franklin. Oh, my God. And that's when we first had our initial conversation about it. And then she called me when I was on Broadway doing Color Purple. I was off that day, and she said, oh, you clapping? Okay. She said, I made my decision, and it is you who I want to play me. Now, young lady, don't you go out there and say nothing. I said, yes, ma'am, I won't. And then the next day, she went and told the press. But I didn't say nothing, okay? And that was probably 8 years after our initial meeting. And then I think 8 years later, which is now, here we are, you know?
No, it's remarkable. So when you think about, you had to pick and choose, right? because I thought it was brilliant to start the film the way you did, right? Because C.L. Franklin's world was vast. At a time when black people were limited, when segregation was devastating, and when black Detroit was flourishing, the greatest city in the world, Detroit, Michigan. I know y'all wasn't trying to argue with that proposition.
Oh.
But the thing is that at a time when all was going on, Sam Cooke, Dinah Washington, Clara Ward, Martin Luther King Jr., and Bobby Blue Bland, who ripped off from C.L. Franklin,
wow.
his, right, he got that from him. So the sacred and the secular were blended. But you had to choose. You start the film there, and then you end brilliantly with that Amazing Grace film that I begged her for 2 years to release, and she was extremely hesitant, right?
Wow.
She didn't want to release it for a variety of reasons. So when you said you wanted to begin in the church and end in the church by making that the bookend, tell us the importance of reminding the audience beyond the Queen of Soul that at the depth of her being was rooted in the gospel church, and the black church with all of its possibility and pain is what we heard when we heard her.
That's exactly right. Again, it goes back to the question I asked myself about what is soul when we say Queen of Soul for her, and her spirituality, her family, singing gospel music, and being raised in that time in America. All of that contributed to who she was as a person and who she was as an artist. And, you know, I was profoundly moved also at the opportunity to show the black church in a way that maybe we haven't seen it. Sometimes it's the butt of jokes in movies, our faith. And I felt like this was an opportunity to show how in this country where people are terrorized for being black, how much support and how church on Sunday contributed to people's survival. Spiritual survival. So you could go into church and you could be revived and reconnected to your faith and to your community, and then you can get up and go to work the next morning where you are experiencing racism 24 hours a day. And that's what whatever you want to say about C.L. Franklin, that's what he provided, and that's what she learned from him.
Yeah.
And that to me was the center of her life and black life in America.
No, it's beautiful the way you blended that, because a lot of people didn't know that C.L. Franklin led the first run of the March on Washington in Detroit.
He did.
In Detroit, where King delivered an interesting and a powerful version of the I Have a Dream speech there. And they didn't know how tight C.L. Franklin and Martin Luther King Jr. was, because they thought, oh, he's like a pimp daddy kind of preacher. And what he was a rhetorical genius. 76 albums, chess records. He was on a gospel circuit opening up space in a way that a lot of people didn't know. And it's beautiful how you presented that.
I also would like to say that I felt that there, you know, the time we spent in childhood, we rarely see affluent black people in period films. Everybody thinks everybody started off, you know, sharecroppers. And while his family certainly did start off as sharecroppers, that's not the end of his story.
Right.
And I just thought it was important to show that she came from affluence and a deeply cultured environment and a deeply political environment.
Right.
Sophistication.
Very, very much so. Speaking of which, when you were studying, thinking, reflecting on how to portray her, I mean, the walk, you killed that walk. You killed that walk with her. I mean, it just, I mean, that just brought me, I was like, man, that's her.
Wow.
Were there little tics, habits, things that she did, flourishes? Did you study, did you reflect, or did you just kind of channel her in your spirit?
I think a bit of both in a way, but the acting coach Leland Thompson. Give him some snaps, honey, yes. He pointed out, like, signature things about her. Like, say, Ray, for example. He had very distinctive things that stuck out, but Aretha was a more introverted person. And she had slight things that spoke of her character, which was completely different from, you know, a Ray. And so it was like finding those little subtleties. So he would say, how does she exist in space? How much space does she take up? You know, how does she walk? She was a floater. Aretha floated through, you know?
She did.
And then thinking of women today versus women back then. And this goes hand in hand with like finding a newfound respect for her. Yes, I love the song Respect because it's a great record and that woman can sing coming from my era. But when you go back and do the research and say, wait a minute, a woman took that song from a man about respect, made it her anthem at a time like that when women didn't have the same rights that we have today. So how much did that take for her to have the confidence to be able to do that? You see what I mean?
That's right.
So like to even see how women existed during that time. I, as a person, take up all the space. So for me as an actress, I was like, wow, now how do I do this without saying, hey, this is how I feel, this is what I want to do, and express myself. Whereas channeling during that era, okay, why did she exist in space this way? How did she express herself this way? How do I, as an actor, tell the story mostly kind of through facial expressions because all of her nuances was extremely subtle, you know, and it's like, okay, but how do I channel that but have subtext under it that's of her character to be able to tell the story so it translates. Whereas Jennifer would be expressive and I would just simply say it and we could do that. But no, I'm Aretha right now. I can't do that. And I'm in the 60s. So by the time I rapped, and I remember saying to everyone when we rapped, I was like, excuse me, y'all, I've been stuck in the 60s for the past 3-4 months. You know? It's just a completely different time.
Right.
Yeah.
Were there any moments when you were emotionally, you know, wrenched that it just wore you out and just, you know?
Yes, it was so many. I think, Liesl, thank you. Rewrote a scene because she was like, okay, it's been too emotionally draining, and thank you for that. Like reapproach the scene so I didn't have to keep being so emotional. And the singing is not difficult or certain acting scenes, but the emotion, oh my God, because it comes from a real place. Right. And especially in this, because this was personal to me, you know what I mean? So it could not have come from anywhere else, and to go to those places, it was very wrenching. Right. Very. It cost.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we see the consequence on that film too.
Thank you.
Now, you are one of the most gifted singers that we have seen.
Thank you.
In the last 25 years.
Oh my God.
No doubt. Right. I mean, the glissando, the melisma, the volcanic eruption, the control, the arpeggio, running up the scale like a track star. I mean, you do all that. What in your mind made Aretha Franklin? Because when Ms. Tommy said, you know, a lot of brilliant singers, in what way do you think she was distinct that made her Aretha Franklin?
First of all, she was anointed. Let's be clear. Okay. That's first and foremost. And she's a genius, but all around. Think about it. Some people are just great vocalists, or you're a great musician, or you're a great writer. No, she was all the above. She was the conductor of the music, the creator, the voice, the musician, the writer. So that was the beauty in it. Like, she could recreate it. She had all the power of it all the way around. And right. I still sit with it and think, like, what other artist is there out there like that? I can't think of any that does it all. And 100% pianist. Yes. 100% singer, songwriter. Go sit and think about it. I'll wait. You know what I mean? No. When you really think about it. And that's what made her Aretha Franklin. And also, to me, the depth in the soul comes from the real life experiences. And she didn't appear to be a very expressive person, you know what I mean, outwardly,
Right.
but I feel like she expressed herself more so through her music, and because it came from a real place, it can't help but to touch others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. Ms. Tommy, so, you know, when you think about what Ms. Hudson just said, in terms of the pianist second to none, right? And, you know, able to line out the parts for people who can't write the music, right? I mean, it's just, that's just genius, right? But, and, you know, with all that competence, she's up against, squeezed between, sandwiched in between white patriarchal authority and black masculine resistance to her authority, right? And you were able, first of all, Marlon, what the hell? I mean, like Marlon.
Give him a hand, y'all.
Marlon. I mean, you forgot, I was like, that's him, right?
Yay.
So you humanized Ted in the same way that Lawrence Fishburne humanized Ike, in the sense that it's not that you let him off the hook, but you gave him a hook of humanity that allowed us to both identify his horror but also understand his struggle. So I think that was amazing. But tell us about, without giving the movie over to men, you acknowledge them in their humanity, what men often don't do to women, acknowledge their complexity, don't reduce them to a stereotype, but allow them to breathe in their nuance. Tell us about doing that in that film.
Well, first of all, I've got to just give props to the writer, Traci Scott Wilson, who I think is a genius. She and I have worked together a lot. She wrote a play called The Good Negro back in the day when we were both young theater artists, and I directed it. And her father was a Baptist minister, and her grandfather was a Baptist minister. And I knew that it was essential for there to be that level of authenticity in this story. You know, but we talked about it a lot because what does the female gaze, the black female gaze, bring to a film? Usually a studio film like this would have been written and directed by white men.
Right.
And so they have been telling us who we are for so long. And that had to end with this movie. And the way that black men have been portrayed is something that is not right. There's more to say. There's more layers. The emasculation that comes from living in a white supremacist culture, it's profound. And I grew up in South Africa during apartheid, so I've seen it, you know, and lived it. So it was very important for us to tell these men's stories and let it be known that this was just a part of who they are. Yeah. And that there's a social, without excusing it, but
right.
that there's a social construct that creates this.
Right.
And also to show that they were just parts of her life. They weren't her whole life.
Right, right.
You know,
right.
that marriage was not the whole movie.
Right.
It was just a step in the movie because we had to keep her, the focus, and her journey, emotional journey, the focus, and her you know, what she went on to do, set that up.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, before I get to the politics, very briefly, but you were able to talk about, through the film, through the language, the vocabulary of the visual, you were able to articulate the kind of what Ms. Hudson talked about earlier. She was an ambivert in some senses, extroverted in some places, but in very controlled environments, and very introverted. But you were able to tap into the complexity of her persona, how she treated her sisters, how she interacted with people who were talented, where the supremacy of her gift made a demand on others, but also on her. And you were able to communicate that, again, without diminishing her, without caricaturing her, but at the same time show that she was a human being who had some some troubles and some struggles, and to keep that balance. Tell us how difficult that is, or how easy that is for you.
I'm also going to say, just preface it with the fact that, once again, I had an actress who I never got tired of looking at.
Amen.
So I could put the camera right there in her face, and I never got tired of looking at what was going on in her eyes, you know. And so that's everything, everything. But the thing I feel so strongly about Black women on film is that they always want us to be strong, and they always want us to be sassy, and they always want to be teaching somebody white something. But what about when we are vulnerable and shy and afraid? And what about when we don't know what to do? You know, that burden of strength that Black women have to carry and have had to carry, it's untenable, and it's not fair.
I know that's right.
Right.
We're so much more. And I felt like Aretha, in her interviews, it was so clear how restrained she was.
Right.
And there was so much there to me, you know, and everybody talks about how shy she was when she was young. And I just felt like this is such an incredible opportunity to show the depth and the breadth of a Black woman.
Yeah. Well, you did it. Yeah, there's no question about that. Ms. Hudson, so a couple things. First of all, what did you learn about Aretha Franklin, her life, her motivation, her aspiration, her goals, by playing her? And, you know, what stood out to you as a kind of interesting thing about her that if we knew, it would make us understand her more?
Oh my goodness. Well, one, I didn't necessarily know how close she was to Dr. King. I never knew how much of an advocate she was for activism, which was inspiring. What else can I say? It still sticks out to me how much, because I mean, I've been around her quite a few times, you know, and I can't say I fully understood her then. But while portraying her, it was almost like having conversations with her in a way. Like, oh, that's what that meant, you know, or maybe that's what she was thinking, kind of thing. Or it sends me back to conversations we had.
Right.
And it wasn't until the moments while filming that I was like, wow, she really experienced these things. She was really letting me in, because Aretha was not the kind to let you into nothing, okay? Let's be clear. Don't be no fool, all right? So to know, like, wow, she was really open in that way. And I didn't realize how wide open she was until portraying her, you know? And I go back to those things like, she really knew what she was speaking about because she lived those moments, you know?
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
No. And you're so right, because there was a world of pain, there was a world of hurt in secrecy and in privacy.
And it helped you understand the makeup of her, of maybe why she was shy or closed off or even carrying her purses on the stage. You know what I mean? I now like, ow, she carried that bag because, you know, different things. Because before this, like, I've always been a fan musically. So yes, I'm going to look at her as a performer and a young Black girl looking up to an icon in that way. But then it changes when you're an actor looking at it as a character that you're going to portray. So it makes you search deeper and from a different perspective, which completely changed the game for me. Like, you know, no,
that's powerful. Finally, the politics. You know, people are surprised. She battled with her daddy, that was for real. And she loved him. I mean, what I appreciate about you in this film, she invited me to the Trumpet Awards, and when she was getting the award, she wanted me to speak on her behalf, on stage with her, about her father and his rhetorical capacity. I mean, the pride that she had to the end in that man was extraordinary. But the battles were real, too, about the politics. And you think about it. Here's a woman out of the King tradition, real tight with him. She told me some funny stories about Dr. King. Can't even tell. But then for her to so unapologetically and unqualifiedly to embrace Angela Davis at a point when it was costly in many ways. Talk to us about her politics and the politics of showing her politics on film.
Thank you for that question. It's, I think that civil rights people who believed in nonviolence as a means to change, had a really hard time with the Black Power movement. It was not easy to make that pivot. I've made a lot of work around that period, work around Black Panthers and the Young Lords, and so I've been privileged to spend a lot of time with Panthers, and I was privy to a lot of conversations about how, because they were so young, the Panthers, what their parents, their civil rights era parents, felt about that movement, and how scared they were, and how angry they were, because the politics of trying to be accepted by white people, trying to put the suit and tie, best foot forward. We would call some of that respectability politics now. How hard it was to see somebody with their hair out to here and not give
two shakes
about what white people were thinking. So it's very complicated, and I'm always more interested in what's going on in the Black community, when you look at this. And I thought it was so incredible. It was such a testament to her ability to be in the moment,
right,
to understand that there was change and that the change was necessary, and it doesn't take away from what her father's generation accomplished and the work that she did as a young person, but she was coming in, she, like the country, was coming into her own Black power and her own woman's power.
Right.
And so for her, that pivot, I found very inspirational.
Right. Very briefly, and I know we're almost out of time, but can you explain and help us understand, because you so clearly comprehend, like with Toni Morrison, I write for Black people. Right now, I want everybody to buy the book and check it out, but I'm writing the intellectual energy, the vision, the focus is without doubt and apology for my people, so I can tell a far more complicated, nuanced story. So tell us, when you talk about Aretha Franklin and you talk about what your goals and objectives are, yeah, you want everybody to see it, you want everybody to engage it, but you want something new to be brought. That is an unapologetic Black voice and vision to lay its eyes and its tongue on the rituals of American society.
't exactly right. I didn't just want to make a Black movie, I want to make a blackity, 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 black movie. But in all seriousness, Aretha Franklin loved Black people.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
And so this movie, from the way it was shot, the way that people were clothed, the way that Jennifer's beautiful skin was able to shine through, we didn't cover her with makeup.
Don't need it. Don't need it.
I wanted to bathe Black people in the film with love, so that the audiences could feel loved.
Look at both of you. Ebony ecstasy and furrowed in coffee flesh. The radiant, ebullient, edifying beauty of ordinary Black people presented on a screen as an extraordinary gesture is still political in our time. And for you doing that and for you portraying that is so exquisite. And in the spirit of Aretha Franklin, I got 3 Black women here tonight. Corey Minor Smith, who wrote the book #Driven, y'all check it out, growing up as her mother, bipolar and paranoid schizophrenic, right? And now working on Black mental health. Kahina Van Dyke, head of the Narragansett and other homes now, financial genius. and Nicole Hannah-Jones, as you know, from the New York Times, who's been taking heat for black people because, like y'all, and all three of them, unapologetically standing up for black people. We celebrate you, we love you, you are a gift from God, and we appreciate what you've done. Let's give it up for Miss Liesl Tommy and Miss Jennifer Hudson.
Really quickly, I want to say thank you to Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, Director Liesl Tommy, for your creative vision and direction, and Jennifer Hudson for your moving portrayal of Aretha Franklin. Thank you for bringing this to Martha's Vineyard. This is your other home. It's our happy place. We want you to come back, all of you. I also encourage you to go in the lobby, please, and check out the beautiful dress that Aretha Franklin wore when she sang Respect at Radio City Music Hall, courtesy of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And please support the festival next week. Thank you, everyone.